Well, South Africa has cut its 2012 trade deficit to about a third of the previously stated shortfall after adjusting the data to incorporate trade with Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland and Namibia. The adjustment was approved by Treasury. Earlier I spoke to Randall Carlson, SARS Group Executive for Revenue Analysis and Planning. Let's take a look.
Well, the data was excluded because of some of the historical events that preceded, the formation of SACU, the SACU countries. And when I say SACU, it means the BLNS countries plus South Africa. So if I refer to BLNS, it excludes South Africa. So first of all, it was excluded before because we were not comfortable with the data. It was a manual system, which led to a lot of under-declarations, wrong declarations, late declarations of trade between these countries. And secondly, it only became absolutely necessary with the introduction of import VAT, where we had to establish borders between the BLNS countries, that we actually had to track the data between trade flows between these countries. And so we had to make absolutely sure that we first of all fix up the systems, and we have a highly modernized and world acclaimed customs modernized systems at our border posts now. So we're much more comfortable about these numbers.
Yeah.
And so we can now put it forward as part of our international trade because that reflects the real economy of South Africa.
So essentially you've got better technology, capturing the data, an automated system and a massive boost essentially to our trade figures.
Yes.
So tell us, the data as we see it now today, how accurate is that? Is that a real reflection of the positive surplus that we're experiencing with these countries?
Yes. Yes, we are very comfortable that the numbers have been thoroughly checked, and that's why we spend the entire year checking these numbers, consulting with our counterparts in Reserve Bank and with National Treasury, and of course with our counterparts in the BLNS countries. And so we are very comfortable. But to give the economists the assurance and the broader public the assurance is that we will be approaching the United Nations to come in addition to what we've done to validate our data in line with international best practice and standards.
Just looking at some of the adjustments. So you had that trade deficit in 2011, which has now gone from a deficit of 25.6 billion rand to a surplus of 44 billion rand. 2012, we went from a deficit of almost 117 billion rand to now a deficit of 34.6 billion rand. And you're looking at the deficit year to date only at 64.5 billion rand. So halving that essentially. Everyone is suspicious. The economists are suspicious, analysts are suspicious. Essentially right now we're looking at a deficit which looks to have been so overstated. What is your message from SARS to those out there who say this is window dressing?
Well, look, first of all, the figures are accurate. So the restated figures are accurate. We are very confident about that. And as I indicated earlier, we will get independent validation thereof. And secondly, to some extent, it reflects the growing trade that South Africa has got with the rest of the African continent, because we have now got a clear view of it, not just beyond the BLNS, but including the BLNS. And to some extent, the strength of or the extent of the adjustment also reflects the economic growth of the BLNS countries. Namibia and Botswana had very strong recovery post-recession, and so we are benefiting from that as a country. So yes, it is quite a radical restatement of figures, but that is reflecting reality as we see it, as it exists.
Yeah, also another comment and commentary that has come out is that why the communication now, it's almost like you surprised the market, positive surprise nonetheless, but it seems odd to many that it just came out of the blue.
Well, look, like I said, we had to do a lot of checking and we had to do a lot of consultation, and perhaps the timing, I can speak to that. We are releasing it ahead of next week's South African Reserve Bank quarterly release of their data. So this will then be incorporated into that data. So that gives them enough time until next week to actually do all of that, which need to be done to reconsider the impact on the national accounts. And secondly, I can't see there's never a right time to release this type of thing. So, we had to absolutely make sure that we check the numbers. We had to make sure that our modernized custom systems are robust, that they go through all the piloting phases, that they go through all the stress testing. And so at that stage, when we were comfortable, we engaged the Minister and the National Treasury, and we put it forward to them. And we felt that this is an appropriate time to release it.
Does this mean South Africa now becomes less reliant on portfolio flows?
I would not say that, because South Africa its international trade with the rest of the world will remain in hard currency, and that hard currency will have to be supported by reserves, first of all, and of course by portfolio flows. So the full extent of this on the national accounts and the current account will be worked through very carefully over the next few days, and that will be then released in a subsequent thing. So I don't want to speculate too much about it, because as I stated earlier, the Reserve Bank did take into account.
So they had estimates.
They
the
had
Reserve
estimates,
Bank.
yes. They did take into account, so this is not a major surprise to them. So what they will do is to do corrections.
So you didn't, essentially what happened, SARS didn't estimate it, it wasn't in the numbers, you're now including it,
Yes,
and of course now SARB has the real hard data, accurate data,
So
as
they,
opposed to estimates.
so they will compare to their previous estimates and correct for the difference. So we can't, the current account won't suddenly go change by a massive amount.
So what other countries are excluded then? I mean, where these systems not being implemented or haven't been implemented yet, and we could have some more surprises, perhaps to the positive going forward?
I wouldn't say that, because the other countries, the flow into SACU as a whole was quite actively tracked. And just remember my earlier distinction when I said that the BLNS board is a fairly new phenomenon. And so it also had to settle, even though it was manual, it was a fairly new phenomenon, about 10 years or so. So the other border posts are fairly well policed and well patrolled and well administered. There could be, of course, I wouldn't deny that could be with our modernized systems that we'll pick up some differences, but we are quite comfortable that it's not going to present a